I saw something I can't explain in a South Carolina swamp. Written by I Am Raiden. I'm not exactly sure how to begin this, but to put it simply, recent events in my life have brought back some bad memories that I feel inclined to talk about. I know some people might not think that this is the right place to post this kind of thing, but I beg you, hear me out. If anyone has more information on this, please contact me. I guess I'll start at the beginning of everything. When I was 10, my father had us move down to South Carolina for his job. It was there where I spent a vast majority of my childhood until my father passed away several years later. I don't want to give out too much information on the specific location, considering my mother still lives in the house, but the place was essentially a very pretty swamp. Our house laid on the edge of a large reed-ridden marsh, which was beautiful to look at, but walking in it unprepared almost always guaranteed you'd be losing a shoe to the mud. I myself once fell victim to the marsh's hunger for shoes, losing one of mine on the first day out there. Whoever owned the house before us decided to build a bridge that went from the back of our house to a river that ran through the marsh, although I never found out for sure. I assumed the river was somehow connected to the ocean because my father was convinced he could turn it into his own private fishing hole the first summer we moved in. My father ended up buying a top-of-the-line shiny red fishing rod for himself and a Diego the Explorer themed rod for myself. Most of the money he spent that day went to buying a small rowboat from a neighbor. Even though my mother advised against spending over $300 on something he'd never done before, he managed to convince her otherwise. However, his dreams of a private fishing spot were promptly destroyed when he didn't catch anything within the first 20 minutes on his first day out on the river. He ended up wading back up to our house mumbling about how fishing is a goddamn waste of time. He himself never went back out there, but for reasons I never found out, he continued to value that damn fishing rod of his. The first couple weeks in the marsh were mostly dedicated to settling into our new home. My parents spent the time getting to know the neighbors. Unfortunately for me, most of them were above 60, and my 10-year-old self had no interest in learning how to play chess. Instead of socializing, I mostly kept to myself and explored the swampy land around my house. Despite being constantly warned by my mother of the countless dangers that lurked in the swamps, that childhood sense of wonder continued to drag me back out into the marsh. To this day, I have no real recollections of encountering anything in the marsh that wanted to hurt me, but that doesn't mean I didn't see anything while I was out there that summer. I remember first encountering my friend after we experienced a particularly bad storm the night before. The day after, the marsh was practically flooded. Our little dock was completely submerged. The rowboat was the only thing that remained above the water. I took the opportunity to try fishing alone. I hoped that flooded marsh would somehow increase my chances of catching fish. My mother was against me going out after the flood, but my father thought it would be a great opportunity to get me into the house so he could work. After talking with my father in private, she emerged saying that it was alright that I took the rowboat out as long as I wore a life vest. I snuck my father's rod on board to have a better chance. My Diego rod wouldn't cut it for the adventures I planned for having that day. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't scared going out there at first. The water was an ugly shade of green, and the unfathomable depth of the river seemed to be deeper that day. Eventually, I found myself in a tiny clearing of reeds. It was a decent distance away from my home, farther than my mother preferred me to be, but I had that gut feeling that this was the place where I'd strike gold. So I cast my line out and waited. Must have sat there for only a mere 10 minutes before I got my first bite. After a brief struggle, I was able to pull in a small ladyfish. Feeling proud of my work, I placed the fish in my pail and cast my line back out into the water. Unfortunately, I saw no more ladyfish that day, but I did manage to hook something else. At first, I tried my best to pull the fish in, thinking it was another ladyfish, but then I soon realized that this would be no easy catch. The power of an unknown fish was strong enough to slowly pull my boat with it. Being filled with a combination of excitement and fear, I pulled even harder. slowly managing to reel in the massive fish. As I pulled it closer and closer to the boat, the fish started to get more and more frantic, its tail breaking the surface every couple of seconds. For those who are curious, I believe that it was a baby tarpon, and after seeing how grown men have struggled to catch them, it's no wonder why I lost my grip on my father's rod. In an instant, my rod was completely submerged into the river, lost forever to the marsh. "No!" I screamed, lunging to the back of the rowboat, nearly overturning it. The rod's shiny red glare vanished as quickly as the tarpon it was hooked to. Tearing up, I slowly made my way back to the center of the boat. I knew I was in deep shit. When I finally managed to regain balance, I realized that in my mad rush to save my father's rod, I'd knocked an oar into the water. Through my tears, I grabbed the other rower and tried to pull the straight oar closer, but to no avail. Just as I was about to start rowing towards the runway oar, I saw something pale move from underneath the boat to the stray oar. Slowly, the pale object began to drag my oar back to the boat. As it got closer, the oar slowly began to raise itself up into the air, and the once pale object broke the surface, revealing itself as a human hand with a firm grip on my oar. I don't know why I wasn't terrified by it immediately. I guess you could blame it on pure confusion, but I really don't know. The hand continuing to drift towards my boat, and then it stopped about 3 feet out and then offered the oar to me. "Dad?" I said, expecting it to be him punishing me for losing his prized rod, but the hand continued to stay still at the surface of the water, still offering me my oar. I decided that I didn't really need the other oar to get home, and tried to get out of there as fast as possible. It was pointless in the end. The hand effortlessly glided next to my boat. Must have made it just 70 feet with just a single oar before I had to stop and catch my breath. Unsurprisingly, the hand was still right next to my boat. My 10-year-old self had no other choice. I figured I'd never escape this hand unless I took the oar, so I did. I expected some horrible monster to jump out of the swamp water and drag me into the murky depths below when I grabbed the oar, but that didn't happen. In fact, it went like pretty much every other time I grabbed something from somebody, except this time it was with a mysterious swamp hand. It appeared to be a normal-looking hand, to say the least. It certainly didn't look like it had been soaked in swamp water. After grabbing the oar, I just stared at it as it hung around the edge of my boat. Wasn't sure what I was looking at. I had no idea what to do next, so I put both oars in the water and tried to row away, but the hand moved again. It flexed its fingers, making what I presumed to be the universal symbol for stop. I stopped rowing, and then the hand then placed one finger up. I believe it was telling me to wait. Then it submerged itself back under the green water. I don't know why I waited. Even my 10-year-old self knew I was dealing with something dangerous, but for whatever reason, be it fear or destiny, I decided to wait for the hand. Minutes later, not one, but 2 hands emerged from the water holding my father's red rod. I took it quickly, too scared to take in what they did, and made my way home as fast as my arms could row. As I rowed away from the clearing, the 2 hands waved goodbye to me. I returned home shortly after, feeling confused, not exactly scared, just in a state of disbelief from the whole situation. My father didn't even seem to care that I was silent for the rest of the night. I think my mother noticed, but she didn't say anything. Didn't want to worry my father, I suppose. That night, questions raced through my mind. What did I see out there? How many hands were there? And most importantly, if it was a person, why weren't there any air bubbles? I figured it was best that I never went back out into the marsh, or at least not out in the water. But lo and behold, the next day I found myself going out there again. To this day, I'm not sure if I should regret that decision.